Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141 and WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. It is Friday and we are continuing our home spring cleaning spruce up series. And tonight we are talking about decluttering your home. Now, sometimes the job is a really small one. Other times the job is huge and you just don't know where to start. Well, my guests are Kendra Littlejohn, owner of Organized by Kendra, and Lisa Rusniak, president and CEO of Goodwill Industries of the Chesapeake. Ladies, thank you so much for joining the conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure thing. So, Kendra, let me start with you since you are in the business of decluttering. How do you define decluttering? How do you know when you or perhaps someone you know needs to get rid of stuff?
Well, I define cluttering as anything that stands in our way of living our best life. That could be mental clutter, that could be physical clutter, it could be all sorts of clutter. And I think we know that we need to declutter when all of those areas of our lives are affected in any sort of way.
Okay, so now I was just thinking about stuff around the house, but you're talking about stuff upstairs too.
Oh yeah, that's a part of it.
Are the two intertwined? Are they connected?
Absolutely. In most cases, the two are intertwined and connected because what's in our what's in our mental often spills over into the physical.
Well, we will definitely drill down a little bit more about that. Okay, so Lisa, how would you define clutter? Is it when you walk into a room or perhaps someone else's house and you clutch your pearls and you go, oh my God?
Well, I think you could define it anyway, any way you like. I think it's really about not having, clean, open spaces that you can relax in. And I am the queen of decluttering as well, because I take all the clutter that you want to get rid of and I turn it into helping people get jobs and job training.
Okay. So, but with that said, because I would imagine, and I don't have to imagine because I've actually seen uh some homes where you walk in and there are no clear spaces. Why are people okay with that?
I think there's a lot of anxiety and stress in the world. I think we can all agree on that. And I think that, people can get overwhelmed with, you know, making time to straighten up and clean things up. And they're, just, really feeling anxious and overwhelmed by it. So they don't. And it just continues to pile up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, I don't think that people are always okay with it. They don't know how to move past it.
What do you mean by not always okay with it?
It just becomes a way of life because they don't know how to deal with it.
Is there a difference between clutter and cleaning? Are those two also related? Can you have clutter and yet in some spaces of a home it can be clean, or can a house truly or a home truly be clean if it's cluttered? Kendra.
Yeah.
I think you can have clutter and still be clean because clutter is not always massive. I think a lot of times when we hear the word clutter, we assume it's this massive stuff, and it's not always that.
Yeah, sure.
You're about to say something, Lisa?
Mail piled up, magazines, even little things like that. You just start piles.
Yeah.
Putting things in piles. And then people, get frustrated. They don't know where to start because they got piles everywhere. A lot of stuff, having shoes on the place, just, not knowing or having a designated space to put things.
Yeah.
It can really affect your mental health.
So, but is clutter What if you just don't have a large house, or does the size really matter, Lisa, when it comes to whether or not you have clutter or not?
Oh, definitely not.
No, definitely not. I'm with Lisa on that one. Size does not matter. Systems matter, regardless of the size.
What is a system?
Systems are the tools and resources you need to create an efficiently ran home. To maximize space and efficiency in your home, you need systems.
Okay, so how does that work? Tell me about that.
Well, that works by you really have to go through your home and figure out how to put the systems in place. You really have to declutter, get to what you need and what you don't, figuring out how your home can best serve you. It could look like organizing a closet, using the proper bins and baskets. And sometimes people just think, oh, any bin or any basket will work. That's not always the case. You have to find the solution that works best in that space. And that's what having systems look like.
So I guess the big question for people who obviously realize that they need to declutter. I'm sure there's some reclutterers as well.
I think so.
But so Kendra, how do I get started? How does someone get started when they finally put their foot down, or perhaps a loved one says it's time to do something about that?
Mm-hmm. I think that the way people get started is to really, really, really get true with themselves and figure out where they need to start, and starting it small in that space, not taking on a gigantic task that is going to overwhelm them.
Okay, so but you said something that's kind of interesting. Uh, be truthful with themselves. What does that mean exactly?
That means it's time to get rid of some stuff. Okay. It's time to get rid of some stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And purging is always where you want to start when you think about organizing.
Mm-hmm. So where do you start, Lisa?
Small. I would start small with any project. Start with your, kitchen. The kitchen, your whole kitchen, all your drawers, your cabinets. Take everything out and start back over again. And then have, bins for what you want to keep, what you want to donate, and what needs to be trashed. And, I think even in my own home, a couple weeks ago, I was going through one of my drawers. I had like 3 can openers and, various tools. Some of the stuff I just bought because I thought it was cool. They were cool gadgets and never used them. And so a lot of people, what they do, and even with clothing, is, um, they after a year they go through whatever they're clearing out, and if they haven't used it, then it's time to make a decision.
Yeah.
So, for example, with clothing, I know a lot of people at the beginning of the year, they go through their closets when the seasons are getting ready to change, and they turn all the things, all their hangers one direction. And then as they wear them, they turn it back the other way. And at the end of the year, it's pretty easy then to identify the stuff that you really don't need. You're hanging on to it. Maybe you think you're going to lose weight. Maybe you think that you'll have an occasion to wear it. But if it's still there, it needs to go after a year because you aren't, probably going to need it or use it. And same with, with anything else, appliances, those gadgets I was talking about. Um, it's very interesting. I think there's a fine line between being a collector and someone who just surrounds themselves with clutter. I think it's about an emotional attachment to things that as we're started to get into. I think there's a lot of stuff in your mind and your mental health, and so a lot of people just wind up just keeping everything because they want to feel some comfort by having that clutter. And, I think it's true, you really have to rethink your space. Your home should be a place that is your oasis and where you are comfortable and you can feel free to relax, and not a space that stresses you out.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really, I think starting small and then working your way up. And maybe, you pick a weekend and you say, okay, I'm going to focus on this room. And then the next weekend, the next room. And so it doesn't become so, you have a 4-bedroom house and you have den and kids, and you're thinking, how am I ever going to make any way with this? And by, I think, paring it down and kind of making a list and a schedule for yourself and holding yourself accountable to it, that's the way to go.
Mhm.
Kendra, you were kind of nodding your head.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Lisa was saying, and I'd like to add to that because she talked about the emotional attachment that we have to things. Some people have a monetary attachment to things. It's, oh, I paid so much for this, I can't let it go. But I want people to reframe their mindset around the monetary attachment. It's, has it served you? It's, has it used its life? Has it, is it time to let it go? Regardless of what we paid for it, has it served you, and is it still serving you today?
Mm. So I've got some kind of questions about how to move through this process, or questions that perhaps you should ask yourself. And I think Lisa kind of touched on it, but I'll start with you, Kendra. Is the best way to begin to move out of the clutter space is to ask yourself, do I love it or do I use it?
Absolutely. Does it serve you? Absolutely. Whether you love it or not, it could still be something that serves you. So that's where I always start. How is this serving you?
Mhm. I mean, but how many can openers can you really have?
Right. 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 Is it really necessary to have 3? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, and but the emotional attachment piece, Lisa, I think and the monetary attachment piece, I think is really critical, to a lot of people, because there are some people who have a lot of difficulty with waste. Does that mean taking that thing, whatever it happens to be, and, for example, bringing it to Goodwill? Do you think that will kind of uh, relieve some of that emotional pressure? Here, I take these 2 can openers, and because even though I spent $50 on this great big beautiful Cuisinart can opener, I already have another one. So does Goodwill, do you think, is that kind of a cathartic for some people?
Yeah, and I think yeah, definitely cathartic, because then you're giving it another useful life to another
Right.
person. But also at Goodwill, we reuse everything. We try to limit our trash as much as possible. So we put it in our stores. We have 33 stores just in Baltimore alone. And if it doesn't sell in one of those stores, then we have an outlet where we sell things by the pound. And then from there, we bale textiles, we bale all of our metal, cardboard, and then we sell that to other buyers who can reuse that in their manufacturing process. So the metal is recycled. We are working right now, we're getting ready to launch 2 new businesses at Goodwill that will take those hard plastics and crush them, and we'll be able to sell them to manufacturers who need that plastic. Same with our glass items. We get a zillion FTD vases. Everybody gets flowers and you hang on to the vase. That's another thing that people have a lot of in their homes. And so they bring them to Goodwill. We just purchased a machine that will take glass and implode it, so there's no hard sides to it, and then it breaks it down into pebbles. Like, you can use different colored for decorative uses for mulch
Yes.
or landscaping, or
That's
put it,
awesome.
put it in your fish tank, or you can take it down to another level and it can create sand. And
Wow.
sand is needed by so many industries. The beach replenishment issues that we have up and down the coast, We're also looking at selling sand to um, construction companies that work on our roads. In fact,
Well,
I know.
hold that point, Lisa, because I need to take a break, but I don't want you to forget your point, because I want to pick that up on the other side. We are going to take a quick break, but don't forget you can hear this at every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. Please stay with us. The Daily Drum will continue on Sirius XM channel 141. The Original Quiet Storm with John Mons is next on WHUR. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our spring cleaning and spruce up series as we focus tonight on decluttering your home. My guests are Kendra Littlejohn, owner of Organized by Kendra, and Lisa Rusniak, president of Goodwill Industries of the Chesapeake. You know, we're talking about clutter, and I knew I was going to clutter your name up. Lisa, forgive me. And a whole bunch of clutter in my mouth trying to get that out. But before the break, Lisa, you were just talking about some of the reusable things that Goodwill is doing with the clutter that people are getting rid of. So please finish your point.
Yeah, so I was talking about our imploder, our glass imploder. If you take it down to yet another level, you can create sand, which is used sandblasting, beach erosion. And we are also looking at selling it to construction companies that use it in road pavement. And in fact, if you remember, I guess it was about a year ago on 95, there was a huge sinkhole on 95. They
Yes.
used sand to help fill in the road there. So it's a big commodity needed that, taken from your FTD vase, could wind up, on a beach, and we're repurposing it. We also have a partnership with Trex. Trex is a company that makes decking out of composite, and they take plastic bags, which are banned in a lot of states, but we still have a lot of them floating around, and they melt them, and they use it in the manufacture of their decking material. So Goodwill is really trying to repurpose everything. So we want to extract the most value from the donor. We want to make people feel great about giving to us. And by doing so, they're not only helping the environment, but they're helping people in their community get jobs.
Well, the next time I drive over 95, I will say, well, at least we put grandma's broken vase to use.
Lisa, I have a question for you. Is that happening at all Goodwills?
It's just really getting started. Our project is a partnership with the Goodwill in Washington, D.C., and the Goodwill in Delaware. And we're just launching, but a lot of other Goodwills are just starting to get into more sustainable efforts because, we all know it, stuff that gets broken when you're on your way to drop it off at Goodwill, or it has chips or cracks, we can't sell it in our stores. So then it becomes waste for us. And trash is very expensive to get rid of. I mean, our trash bill is typically about $500,000. So we're looking at ways to repurpose that and actually earn revenue in that process and keep things out of the landfill.
So I do want to get back to the decluttering of the home, because one of the things that you just said, Lisa, I think is really important. When you talk about repurposing, Kendra, not everything that you have during the decluttering process may need to be thrown away.
That's right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, there are tons of items that we can reuse when we're decluttering your homes. And I always look for ways to repurpose the products that the clients already have before we go out and buy new products. But then there are other times when the products that they have just don't work in the space as best they can.
Give me an example.
So a lot of times I find simply as the shape of the bin or the basket that they have doesn't work. because you're actually losing space. Tapered bins, in particularly, I don't recommend because you lose space. Perfectly square or rectangular bins or baskets are best.
Hmm. So when somebody hires you to declutter,
Hmm.
I would imagine you have to work on your poker face when you first show up. If there's a
Sometimes,
so
sometimes, but at this point, nothing surprises me, honestly.
so talk to me about the conversation that you may have with someone who obviously needs a lot of work. We're not talking about
Hmm.
starting small. We're talking
Hmm.
about, I'm sure at some point you're thinking maybe I can get a Caterpillar brand bulldozer and just throw the entire
Just
interior
throw the
away.
whole house away.
Yeah. So how do you have those conversations?
Well, I think a lot of times when people finally come to me, they're already at the point where they realize the work that needs to be done, which is very helpful for me. But then at the same time, there are people who don't always realize the magnitude of the work that needs to be done. And that's where the conversation, has to come in. And so for me, it's more about helping them to realize their why and helping them to keep that why at the forefront of their minds as we go through the project. A lot of times people are downsizing. A lot of times there are different transitions that are happening in their lives. So their why is always different. They may be taking care of an elderly parent that they have to move into their homes. So helping them realize the why and keeping that why at the forefront of their minds is the conversation that I always have.
But I can imagine also as you're kind of going through the process with someone and correct me if I'm wrong, and you may want to explain this, but how do you determine what to go? Because you may see something that seems obvious. Well, definitely needs to go,
Mhm.
this thing over here. And that person says, no, 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 I need to keep that. Okay. Well, then maybe we can do something with it. No, 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 I need to keep. I mean, does it get to the point where you spend time with them? And because, for me, I would probably turn around and say, okay, so what are we doing?
Mhm. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. After about 2 times of asking, I don't spend a lot of time with trying to make people get rid of things.
Hmm.
Yeah, because that's a disservice to me and also to them. Honestly, in the end, if they're not ready to let go, then they're just not ready to let go.
So what are the most common items, Lisa, that you see coming in? But besides clothes, I mean that I think that the clothing thing is a no
Hmm.
brainer.
No brainer. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that you take out, for me as a man, if I take out 5 or 6 suits, okay, all of a sudden I definitely have room. But Lisa, I would imagine that there are some things that may not necessarily be so obvious related to clutter. And I'm not talking about furniture,
Mhm.
but what other things other than clothing or furniture that you see a lot of that are really at the heart of decluttering?
Probably books.
A lot of books, records, video, um, a lot of dishes,
Oh
tons.
yeah.
It's kind of crazy. People seem to collect dishes. May not match, may be chipped, but we get a lot of dishes. Um, Appliances, lots of appliances. And, just comes with when people replace things when they break.
Hmm.
But I think, books are a definite big one for us.
Hmm. Kendra, you agreed with the book thing. What about pictures? Obviously, those things are quite sentimental. They have memories. And I, just to bring myself into this whole equation, um, I do not like clutter.
Hmm.
I can't do it. And absolutely refuse to do it. My house is not large, but sitting in my dining room. You can see all the way. There's no clutter all the way to, to the living room there. But, and I think, for me, once I see anything begin to pile up, even papers, I throw them out because, I will see it. I will see, papers or some, old mail. And I think one of you mentioned old mail, for example. And I'm like, what are you doing there? And I certainly get rid of it. But back to the whole thing about pictures, is there a way to reduce, Kendra, the space that pictures take up and so keep them? I mean, is digitizing something? Because I've got a lot of pictures. I don't look at them, but if I come across them, I'm like, I can't throw out the pictures. I can't throw out my prom pictures from the 1800s.
I would say yes, digitizing them. That could be just putting them on a drive. That could also be making books out of them. We have some people that make T-shirts, make blankets out of them, and then actually throw the paper copies of the photos away. So there are options, and that field is becoming more and more advanced.
Yeah, you mentioned books, Lisa. When those books come in, what do you do with them?
Sell them. And
really?
What we don't sell, we sell for pulp.
Oh my God. My Bernstein Bears kid book, or Alice in Wonderland, could end up being mulch.
No, pulp.
Pulp, but not pulp. Now explain how the pulp thing works. What do you mean pulp?
We have buyers that will buy books. They take out the binding and then they shred the paper and it creates pulp, and then they reuse it for other paper products.
I see. So Kendra, again, when you're going through the process and you're having these kinds of conversations, is there ever a point where someone says, I need to keep this just in case?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Explain that.
And I say, well, walk me through your why. And if it makes total sense to them, then hey, keep it. If it doesn't, then there's a different conversation.
So what would that why be? That that just in case? Because again, I would imagine now books, because of the business that I'm in. Yes, there are times when I may use books as reference. But I really love my books. I really, really do. And there is some sentimental value to them because they are reminders of a different time, a great time in my life. So, again, is that why question still part of the book thing too?
Absolutely. I'll give you an example. I'm working with a lady who's a retired nurse now. And she's been retired for many years. And she still has all of these supplies. And actually, she's probably the third nurse I've worked with who still has all of these supplies. And she says, I keep them just in case. And I go, well, just in case what? There's another pandemic. and we can't go out.
Pandemic.
We can't go out and get supplies, or the supplies are not easily accessible, or they're sold out. So I come across a lot of reasons, a lot of whys as to why people need to keep the things that they keep. But if it makes sense to them, then hey, let's do it and move on.
So Lisa, how do you know? And I know you're with Goodwill, but this is an Antique Roadshow question. How do you know if there is something that you may have that is of value?
That's a great question.
Yeah, during the decluttering. I mean,
yeah,
is that is that garage sale painting in my dining room, is it a Picasso?
It could
Or
be.
is
It
or
could be.
or is it
It could be.
a Peter?
So at Goodwill, we have a group of people who are experts in different areas. Art is one of them. Jewelry, musical instruments, any kind of antique item. And so when something comes through our back door, if it looks remotely like it could be something like crystal, or sometimes we get ceramics from Japan, made in Japan before the war. Just
Mhm.
all kind. People don't even know what they're donating. They're cleaning out grandma's
They don't
attic
even
and
know
never
sometimes.
thinking about. And so we have specialists who they take a picture of it and they will research it and see if it does have value.
Mhm.
And we have another platform on which we sell called shopgoodwill.com.
Mhm.
And it's a online auction site, just like eBay. And so a lot of these items we'll put online, and we have customers all over the country. And if they know what they're looking for and they go on our site, they can find it. We've sold, oh, I don't know how many paintings over the years. Some, I remember one just in the last year was worth $36,000.
Oh, wow.
We have people who at one point collected these playing cards and they play with people all over the globe. Someone donated, I think, 3 or 4 binders, and they went for thousands and thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Now, it's
But
all for
see,
a good cause at Goodwill, so that's a good thing. But it's just kind of amazing what people donate and don't
Right.
know what the value is.
well,
Um,
that was my point. Ideally, uh, I need to know before I give it to Goodwill.
Mhm.
no, we want you to give it to Goodwill. We'll extract the most value for you and put people to work and help people out of poverty. That's what we want.
So, but like I said, if I have it, I couldn't bring it to Goodwill and say, "Is this worth something?"
Oh no, we don't have.
Mhm.
You don't have like right. And that's the point, Kendra, when in your work,
Mhm.
what kind of eye do you have to have?
And I was just what I was gonna say. Sometimes you're lucky enough to find an organizer like me who has an eye for those expensive things, or who has a relationship with an appraiser that can research those things for you.
So give me an example of something that you've seen, and perhaps even the reaction of the person who was ready to just, get rid of that Rembrandt on the wall.
Well, I had one client who had a set of small plates that were made in Japan, and as soon as I saw made in Japan, I knew that they were worth some money. So I had an appraiser to look at those items for her, and she got I don't remember exactly, but I believe about $800 for the set. It was just 4 of them. She got
Hmm.
about $800 for the set.
Hmm. Wow, that's really, really fascinating to me.
Hmm.
Do you think that there is a certain, personality trait, perhaps even like mine? Are there just some people who, after they declutter, that they're just back at it again, Kendra? Because again, you know, why can't some people just not reclutter their home, or not keep their home?
Maintain it,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I think with the clientele that I work with specifically, which is ambitious entrepreneurs mostly, they just don't have the time. They just they just don't have the time. They don't have the time. So that's why I offer a maintenance plan to them. That's where I go back periodically or on a schedule rather to maintain the systems that they have. And then there are other people who are just shopaholics and who have yeah, who are not ready to give up shopping. And so then they're right back at square one.
Hmm. Because again, as I said, I wouldn't consider myself a shopaholic, but I will say that uh, I guess you
Here
saw
comes
that.
the honesty.
I call it.
Yes, but again, in order to do that, and in order to maintain a decluttered home,
Mm-hmm.
that some stuff not only has to go, but honestly doesn't really get to stay.
Right.
And I will say also, even in some other homes, um, if you go to somebody's house and there are things gathering dust, obviously that have
Mhm.
not been touched, it isn't, Kendra, isn't that the easy thing to get rid of? I mean, you can go back and forth and you can debate and what have you, but the reality is you can say, "Whew, you see that dust? So obviously you've not touched it."
Well, I don't think dust is an indication that we need to get rid of it. That's more of an indication that we need a housekeeper. If I'm honest.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, because things will naturally collect dust, right? Things will
Right.
just naturally collect dust. So yeah, I don't think that's an indication of it being time to let go.
Okay, because I was going to now for I can only imagine a married couple and one spouse saying, "See, hun," Kendra says, "We need a housekeeper."
We need a housekeeper.
That's right. We don't need to declutter. We just need a housekeeper.
Yeah. Well,
And
sometimes you need both, but
you prevent me from needing to do all of that, all of that cleanup.
yeah.
Um, now here's the other piece, and I think this is a more serious piece. Um, and again, Kendra, this is for you and the kind of work that you do for for older people who
Mhm.
obviously are. This isn't about clutter. This is about hoarding.
Mhm.
Okay. Have you come across that kind of situation that perhaps another relative has tried to help an older relative address that? And if so, tell the tale. How do you address that? A hoarding situation.
So I have had some people who have inquired about services for hoarders. I don't work with hoarders
Oh, I see.
because there's a mental aspect to hoarding that an organizer cannot fix.
Hmm.
And so it goes a lot deeper than the services that I can offer.
So how do you differentiate between someone who is trying to address that and someone who is over cluttered? I mean, how fine is the line, short of the kind of thing that we've seen on
Mhm.
television? I mean, I'm certainly there is a line that you can go right up to.
Yeah, there is a fine line, but there's a scale that's made available to professional organizers that we
Mhm.
use that defines the different levels of hoarding, and I stop at level 2.
Tell
And
me about what's the scale? I've never heard of that before.
so it's a scale from 1 to 5 of like how bad the hoarding is, or where hoarding really starts. And so I stop at level 2, and at level 2, beyond level 2 is where you start dealing with more health hazardous issues.
Hmm.
And then those issues I don't deal with. So you're starting to deal with different feces or different other hazardous materials that might be in the space. And so I stop at level 2 because that's when it gets into those type of areas.
So what's level one?
Level 1 is, well, you don't have the hazardous issues, obviously. Um, you have too much stuff that is not necessarily considered light decluttering. It's a little more than light, but not as bad as level 3.
It's messy.
It's
Level,
messy.
level one is
It's
messy.
messy, but it's not a level 3 where you get to the hazardous materials.
So what's
And
level
things are
three?
not piling up past the bed, if you will. Like I've worked with a lady who had things on the bed, and I've consulted with a lady who had things almost to the ceiling.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. So those are how you differentiate between the levels.
And that's a
Like, can
level
you walk in
three.
the door or can you not walk in the door?
So level three is That's level 3.
Yeah, that's where level 3 starts.
Lisa, this is fascinating. So what is level 4?
Oh, we don't even want to talk about what level.
Yeah, no, we do.
Like, you can't come in the door.
I'm really learning something now.
You can't come in the door. You can't. You can barely walk through a room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And level 5?
It's even worse than that. Can you imagine? Absolutely
No,
not.
no, I can't.
Absolutely not.
I can't.
Yeah.
So,
and so that's why I say, you know, there's a mental aspect that needs to come into play once you get past. I mean, even in level 2, actually, but once you get past level 2, yeah, there's definitely a mental issue going on.
you know, I'm just listening to this. A long time ago, I remember going to a relative's house and going in the door. And this was the thing that's really fascinating to me. That's why I was asking about those levels, is that there was a path from the front door through the living room
Mm-hmm.
into, into the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that I could really compare it to was walking through a forest, through a well-beaten path with leaves and plants and trees on either side, but it was just stuff.
Yeah.
And I found it, particularly disturbing because when you got to the kitchen, then it was really, again, there was just stuff. And as a person who likes to cook, the first thing that I could think about was, how do you cook in a place like this where the counters,
Right.
you know what I'm saying, Lisa? And I can just see the consternation on your face right now. You're like, you may need to send Goodwill in to start its own decluttering business,
Yeah.
to just kind of help people move through that process.
Yeah. And when your clutter is starting to affect your ability to just do everyday things, then it's more than just, I need an organizer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa, I only have a minute or so left. Your thoughts about what I just shared as we kind of wrap up.
Well, I think that, if people, like with any addiction or any kind of, obsessive compulsive disorder, which I think is what we've been really talking about, which is
Yeah.
much more significant than clutter. For those who recognize it, there's help out there. There's lots of help. But for people who are just, overwhelmed by mess, I would say, just start small. The Amazon box sitting at your front porch, empty out whatever you bought, start filling it up with stuff that you don't need. And it's, just do a visual and say, am I using this? Do I really need this? Is it something that I really love? Is it something that I really, want to pass down for generations? Or is it just something that I should just get rid of? And someone else can use it. And, with organizations like Goodwill, we're helping the community with the proceeds, which I think should make everybody who's trying to declutter feel great about the cause that they're giving to.
I think I will have to let that be the last word. Ladies, thank you so much. My mind is even less cluttered now that I've had a chance to talk to both of you. So I appreciate the work that you are doing. And thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
That is the Daily Drum for this Friday, May 3rd. For News Director Renee Nash, reporters Millette Green, Bramante Bryan, producer Candace Atkins Wilson, and engineer Bobby Adams, I'm Harold Fisher. Good night and have a wonderful week.